and what they had done and what they'd passed on, what teachings they had. And so it's clear that the disciples, the people who said that they knew Jesus and walked with him and said that they were passing along Jesus' teaching, that they really lived, that they are all historic people, that they really existed. And the question more comes down to is the guy they're talking about, Jesus. They keep, all these real historical people keep talking about this guy, Jesus, who lived and died and rose from the dead. Were they telling the truth, or are they essentially creating a mythology about Jesus?
Well, the mythology surrounding Jesus was already developed by Paul's time. This is plainly seen in Paul's writings. So it wasn't so much that they were just making some shit up. They were using the scriptures as well as what was already known about Jesus in order to concoct stories so that they could teach things to the Christians. Teach the core tenets of Christianity to them through this supposed Jesus Christ. The main problem that I see right here with what Jimmy is saying is that he assumes the people that wrote the Gospels are the named authors and that these were historical people that were in fact disciples of Jesus. When in fact, we don't know if there were any disciples whatsoever, but they most likely didn't exist considering that Paul never mentions anybody as a disciple. And there are people that Paul mentions who eventually end up becoming disciples of Jesus in the Gospels. So no, it's not that they were lying or making something up out of whole cloth or something like that. They were just using what they already knew about Judaism and Jesus to concoct these stories.
Well, we know that these followers of Jesus were writing books pretty early. Jesus, supposedly died in the mid-30s AD. Well, the first part of the New Testament that was written is written about the mid-50s. So about 20 years or so after Jesus supposedly died. The New Testament, we often think about the Bible as being like one book, but the Bible is made of many books and letters, and the New Testament itself is a collection of books which tell the story of Jesus and letters which were written by people in the church to other Christians talking about their faith and religion. And the earliest thing that was written in the New Testament is the book of 1 Corinthians. It's a book written to the city of Corinth by a guy named Paul, who says he's an early follower of Jesus. In fact, Paul claims to have had an encounter with Jesus.
Well, we need to be very specific here. I do agree that Paul was writing in the 50s and that Jesus supposedly died in the 30s, although one caveat, early 30s, not mid-30s. But also, we have to clarify what Paul means by an experience with Jesus or an encounter with Jesus. We're not talking about like a physical encounter with Jesus like here on earth before he died and all this other shit, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Paul having a hallucination of Jesus, in which Jesus appeared to be somewhat physical to him. Paul even claims in his letters that Jesus took on a physical form, it even had blood and all this other stuff, but this is all perfectly understood if you understand what the Jewish scriptures say about this Messiah figure. But regardless of all that, the encounter that Paul had was not a physical one that historically happened here on earth. This was a hallucination or a celestial experience that Paul had.
Now, regardless of whether you believe his claims that Jesus is God, it's hard to dispute the fact that Paul is writing very early after the time that Jesus supposedly lived. And as he's writing to the city of Corinth, he's mentioning Jesus, and it's clear that there's already a robust religion that has formed around the idea that Jesus is God. He is in a separate part of the world writing to the city of Corinth, discussing religious issues that they all share in common, religious beliefs that they all believe together. So very quickly after this supposed life of Jesus, Christians are already in existence. They're already writing about a pretty well-developed religion, and they're already making the claim that Jesus, not only that Jesus is God, but more foundationally that Jesus lived, that there was a guy named Jesus.
Technically here, everything that he just said could be believed without needing a physical Jesus. Just the mere belief that Jesus represented those things, like being the Son of God and that he died and resurrected and all that, just the mere belief is all that was required for the later Christians to adopt it. You see, he talks about how this whole religion just sort of came up somewhat out of nowhere, but he fails to indicate that the earliest Christians were actually Jewish Christians. There's an intermediate group between Jews and Christians Christians. Those would be the Jewish Christians. These would be the actual first Christians that were in existence. They held to both Jewish laws as well as this new Christian understanding. So while, yes, there was a shift to Christianity in some of the Jewish sects that were around in the first century, but considering how the Jewish lore is set up, which we'll probably get into here in a little bit, it was a very slight shift from Jew to Jewish Christian.